Eddie Chavez, Ruben Nava, and Jesse Romero. Jesus 911.
Jesus 911, Virgin Most Powerful Radio. My name's Ruben Nava. My partner Jesse Romero is with us, and we also have our special guest, Henry Romero, retired commander, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, my former captain, former lieutenant, current friend, brother in Christ. Good to have you with us, Jess and Henry.
Reporting for duty, sir. We're 10-8, Ruben.
Yeah.
Hey, I think today's going to be, I have to admit, I just got corrected because I just read a new article about the George Floyd case, and this information is going to be so powerful for the defense because the first couple of days when we saw the video and we were just listening to all the hype in the media, we didn't have 90% of this information that we have now. And I don't know about you guys, but I've done a 180 on this case. In my opinion, as we go through the article, in my opinion, I believe that the 4 policemen in the George Floyd's death, they acted entirely according to their training and their guidance provided for them by the Minneapolis Police Department. And I think the facts are going to demonstrate that in a court of law.
Jesse, it just goes to show you that cops are not out there looking to kill people and looking to, look at, especially do the racism. Does racism exist in the world? Of course it does. But, the majority of cops out there are good people. They're doing their job, and they're not out there saying, hey, who are we going to take down today? Who are we going to murder today? That just doesn't happen. At least it doesn't. I've never seen it. And has it happened? Of course it's happened, but this is a rare instance.
Ruben, so after reading this article, what were you moved by this, your position? And then I want to get Henry's take.
Yeah, I'm completely of the opinion that these guys should get off. Will they get off? That I cannot say, but they should get off. At least they'll have a case if they get convicted to appeal, maybe appeal this after the dust settles.
Yeah, Henry, we after reading this article, we'll go through it now for the audience. But are you moved by this article? Are you swayed by the arguments?
Most definitely. The article really was pretty comprehensive. The only thing that the article was missing, obviously, was the state of mind of the police officers, and that again.
Oh, I think we lost his.
Henry froze. Okay, he's back. Go ahead. You just froze a little bit. Go ahead, Henry.
Okay, you got to remember that there are
internet connections, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Henry's making. He's making a good point that we have to have the statements, the state of mind of the police officers. That's so crucial.
Okay, so here's what the article says. Let's look at a couple of things here. It says, it got a picture of it says, okay, they are in handcuffs, now what? So it's got an illustrated picture from the Minneapolis Police Department's official training manual on how to safely and properly subdue a suspect suffering from excited delirium, which is a potentially lethal medical condition which, due to the rising use and abuse of illicit drugs, has grown to epidemic proportions on the streets of America. If you look closely, the depicted suspect is flat on the ground with his head turned to the side in what the illustration calls the recovery position to alleviate positional asphyxia, and the officer on the left is kneeling on the side of the suspect's neck. Does this look familiar? This looks exactly like the protocol being used by Officer Chauvin and his 3 partners. What do you guys say?
Yeah, looks like that to me. I've never seen it, so he didn't just make it up. He was trained on it.
Yes, it's like, I'm going to go in and hurt somebody today, put my knee across. That was he's doing, just like everybody does. What happens when you go to a call? You resort to your training. How have you been trained to handle this call? I'm looking at the pictures from the Minneapolis, and these people are cowards. I'll tell you why. The fact that they would train the cops in such a manner and then when they do what they're supposed to do based on their training, based on a suspect who's under the influence of fentanyl and he's got excited delirium, then they throw all four of them under the bus after they've trained them this way. You talk about political. These guys were political. These guys were just political victims for a department that basically just caved in on their own policy. What do you guys say?
No, absolutely.
It's pathetic. It's pathetic what they did to these officers.
Everything that you're talking about is pretty much right on line. The whoever made the decision to go ahead and fire them obviously was not familiar with the training, because it happens. Trust me. You move up the chain, and command staff forgets what's going on in the training world, and sometimes they forget the policies that are being implemented. That was one of the reasons why our department always talked about sending the command staff to train to make sure that they were up to date to monitor these classes. But that's one of the reasons why you probably got that chief of police and his command staff. They were, again, use of force from the perspective of police work, it's never pretty. I don't think I've ever seen a use of force case. I don't care how good of a case it is. It's not pretty. And so this case, it was a use of force case. It did not look pretty at all. In fact, as soon as they inserted the word, it was a racist act, it just blew things out of proportion. And after reviewing the video, reviewing the training, listening to the audio of the body camera, I cannot find that this act is racist in any way. I mean, the guys acted accordingly to how they were trained.
Absolutely, Henry, you hit the nail right on the head. There has, in my opinion, there's not one shred of evidence that would say that this is racist. They didn't use any derogatory language or racist language. And, the good majority, there's a good high percentage of minorities that live in that town. So they're dealing with them all the time, So it was.
And this guy was there 19 years. It's not like it was his first time in the rodeo.
Jesse, what's interesting is that, okay, so in the beginning, the state attorney general, Keith Ellison, he recommended third-degree murder charges, and that was huge, because there doesn't have to be an intent to affect the death of another person, yet it causes the death of another person by imminently dangerous, activity, dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life, is what the verbiage is in the statute. But then when they upped the ante up to, he was getting pressure. Let's make this a second-degree murder. Now it's a little different, because it says he says he's seeking it on the grounds perhaps lesser known and still under the second-degree murder statute is a clause whereby the charge is applicable when the defendant can be proved having caused the death of someone without intent to affect the death of another person while committing or attempting to commit a felony offense. So he's gambling on a prior felony having been committed in the events of the arrest preceding Floyd's demise. So the alleged felony here is illegal excessive use of force. That's what he's gambling on, because without that, he doesn't have that second degree murder. He's not going to be able to substantiate that. And if there's not another felony, then those other three officers are not, aiding and abetting, a felon, so those guys are going to walk if they get a fair trial.
Yeah, they again, what your audience has to realize is that it's not just one investigation that's going on. There are several investigations. You got the feds in there looking at the case. You got the state in there looking at the case. You have the local jurisdiction, the DA's office, and you got your own department all looking at the same case. And they all have to come up with some, they're all looking at different aspects of it. The department itself is looking at two things. They're looking to make sure that you're using proper training and that you're not violating their policy. Based on what some of the slides that have been leaked or released, it doesn't appear that these boys, these men in any way, shape, or form violated their department policy and or used tactics that were not taught to them. And as far as, like I said, you got to be able to go ahead and prove that these guys had malice in their heart to go ahead and show that there was some sort of a crime. I don't think you're going to be able to find that. And these guys, because you got criminal investigations out there, they don't have to talk. They are afforded their Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination. They don't have to say a word. The only time that they have to speak is when there is an internal investigation and you're ordered by your department to speak under duress.
Yeah.
And so we won't have that statement probably till after the trial. And if they decide to go ahead and take it before the trial, those statements probably will not be able to be used during the trial, whatever statements that they make.
Right. And, so our listeners know, the burden of proof is on the state. They have to prove their case. Also, it's interesting is that the Hennepin County autopsy revealed no evidence of crushed bones or ligaments that would typically indicate asphyxiation. The autopsy itself has since been removed from the Hennepin County's online database. So,
well, there you go. So they're not going to be able to say that it was caused because of the knee to the side of the neck. But the bottom line is that these 4 officers, starting from Derek Chauvin, they were using officially approved and mandated Minneapolis Police Department training curriculum on dealing with a person who has excited delirium. And so you have they have their defense lawyers are going to have the manual with pictures. They're going to be able to put them on a PowerPoint and say, this is how they're trained. This is what my client did. What? They're guilty of what? They're not guilty of anything. They're guilty of following what the Minneapolis Police Department trained them. And they followed it to a letter.
all right, we'll be right back. Keep it fun.
Hi, this is Jesse Romero from the Terry and Jesse Show, also from Jesus 911. Let's face it, we all need to use the internet, but we need screen accountability. Why? Pornography is a huge problem, especially on the internet. And every time we tap into the internet, we get bombarded with images and temptations that degrade our humanity. So we need Covenant Eyes to block these pornographic sites and advertisements from infiltrating our lives. Covenant Eyes helps us take custody of our eyes and custody of our intellect. So I recommend you go to covenanteyes.com and type in the promo code VMPR to support the network. Protect yourself and your family from the imminent threats on the internet.
How does the baby move in your tummy?
Hi, this is Jesse Romero from the Terry and Jesse.
Can the baby hear me? How did the baby get in there?
Wow, a pregnancy can sure generate a lot of questions. But what's important is that a baby is a baby, inside and out of the womb. Not just after birth, but 9 months before. At conception.
That's right. Every baby is a miracle. Hello, my name is Marianne Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org, or better yet, simply dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say the keyword pro-life. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
A baby's heart is beating 18 days from conception.
Pro-life across America, the Billboard people.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
Jesus 911, we are back. We have a 3-man car today. We got our guest, Henry Romero, Jesse's older brother. And you know what? But Henry, you look younger than Jesse, so I got to give you that.
Thanks, Ruben.
White mustache. He still has black in his, brother.
Yeah, that's what happens when you go up the chain of command there, huh? The command staff, you get more stress all the way up.
It's what's called wisdom, brother. Wisdom.
There you go.
Yeah, well, no, the Bible actually says that white hair comes from, it's a sign of wisdom in the book of Proverbs.
Right. It just
Ruben, you made an important point about the autopsy and the toxicology findings that he didn't die, that he died exactly from probably a massive lethal overdose of fentanyl. And the fact is, it demonstrates that he didn't die because there was a knee on the side of his neck. This guy had so much drugs in his system. It was just a miracle that he was even alive. This is a political prosecution. I'll tell you the worst thing about all of this. Think about how much property damage, how many people have been killed, cops included, and innocent people have been killed because of a fake narrative that the Minneapolis Police Department went after a black person to, targeted him just to kill him because they're racist. And look at how much damage has been caused around the country. Every single person that was involved in this political prosecution, they should be held responsible. The country's on fire right now in many cities because of this fake narrative that these 4 officers were racist and killed a black man.
Yep, I agree.
I agree with you immensely. The whole narrative falls apart when you start reading and actually dissecting the entire incident. In and of itself, that's what this whole anger is about. The racist cops, the racist cops, the racist cops. Once you look at the entire video and you look at the training, look at all that stuff, where does the racism? I can't see racism injected anywhere, and that's the whole thing. And that's the problem with the people complaining. Their whole narrative falls apart once you actually take a look at the entire picture.
And you even had the transcripts in this article. By the way, if anybody wants to read the article, just go to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. You can read the article. It's called Chauvin, Lane, Kung, and Thao, the George Floyd Fall Guys. I also have it on my website, JesseRomero.com. You could read the actual transcript of the conversation that took place back and forth. These guys were professional. I mean, I know a lot of other people that would have been a lot less courteous in their language when you're dealing with a guy that's, uncooperative, under the influence of narcotics, and acting erratic. I'm sure there's other people that our lower nature would have kicked in, and you probably would have been using other colorful words. These 4 guys were completely professional from beginning to end, and the transcripts are right there for everybody to read.
Right. Yeah, Jesse, the article spells out a key point. And by the way, the article is written by a former attorney, and he does a very good job of defending these cops. It was almost as if he was, going through practicing his attorney skills again. He's a former federal and state prosecutor, is what he is. George Parry, from 78 to 83, he was the chief of police brutality misconduct unit of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, which investigated and prosecuted the use of deadly force by police. And he blogs. He's got a blog thing going out. So, but the one thing that stuck out to me is the part of the article where he goes into how he says that the defendants are not guilty of the charges and in fact played no material role in bringing about Floyd's death. And he spells it out. He says in different, like the bullet points, during his interaction with police, George Floyd was suffering the effects of a self-administered toxic overdose of fentanyl. By the way, if you haven't seen the video, the body cam, when the officer gets him out of the car, he turns to look at the officer, and there's a tablet on his tongue, and that tablet they recognize it as I think it's 2 grams of fentanyl, and then when he shows his mouth again, it's gone. So he swallowed it, which happens all the time when we, guys try to swallow their evidence. So, Adendra is a powerful synthetic painkiller, signs of which include severe respiratory depression, seizures, hypertension, coma, and death. According to his toxicology report, the Floyd had over 3 times the potential lethal amount of fentanyl in his blood when he expired.
Wow. Before
he was restrained on the ground by the police, and upright and mobile Floyd complained 7 times that he can't breathe. Police twice called for emergency medical services to render aid to Floyd. These calls for medical aid contradict the popular narrative that the defendants acted intentionally and against their own self-interest to brutally kill Floyd in public before witnesses with video cameras. The next point is Floyd's autopsy report states the following: no life-threatening injuries identified, no facial, oral, mucosal, or conjunctival petechiae. I don't know how to pronounce that word. No injuries of anterior muscles or of neck or laryngeal. How do you pronounce that, Henry? Laryngeal structure.
There it is.
Yeah.
The neck.
Yeah.
There it is. There's the vindicating evidence. These two paragraphs you're reading, Ruben, should be used by their defense attorneys and give this to the jury. There's no way you're going to find them guilty.
No scalp, soft tissue, skull or brain injuries, no chest wall or soft tissue injuries, rib fractures other than a single rib fracture from CPR, vertebral column injuries or visceral injuries, and the last thing is incision and subcutaneous dissection of posterior and lateral neck, shoulders, back flanks, and buttocks, negative for occult trauma. They didn't beat him. They didn't rough him up with their knees, and there's no sign of trauma on him, other than that he just his heart went out apparently from the fentanyl, and he had underlying conditions with he had a heart condition. He also had COVID-19. What does COVID do? It affects your respiratory system. So not only was the fentanyl affecting him, so was the COVID, and then also he had meth in his system. He had marijuana in his system. Oh boy, he was a mess, Jess.
No, this guy was a pharmacy. He was like a walking pharmacy. Henry, reading that evidence, I mean, this well-detailed evidence, I mean, there's just no way any objective, reasonable, ordinary person in a jury is going to find these guys guilty.
I believe you're correct. I don't believe that's going to happen again. These guys are going to have to make a decision, to be honest with you, to either have a court trial or a trial by their peers. It makes a big difference. Right now, the trial of the peers doesn't appear that anybody in Minneapolis at this point believes their story, and that's part of the problem. When we talked about change of venue and trying to get them out of there. But then I don't know which judge it's going to go in front of. They decide to have a court trial. Then it's really just up to the judge. And the part of the problem is, can the judge be swayed by public pressure?
Exactly.
There's no way they're going to find someone who's never heard of this case. So they're going to have to rely on the fact that they can keep an unbiased opinion. They can make, based on the facts, they can make render a verdict, a decision, with no, prejudice. And so I think you're right, Henry. If I was a betting man, I would go with just the court trial with just the judge, and let him and roll the dice.
And hopefully he's not a Clinton or Obama appointee.
Yeah, exactly.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys think that judges aren't swayed by their political persuasion? Come on, let's wake up here.
They are. They're swayed by their political.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that's why you get to pick your judges, and that's what happens when you get to pick judges that kind of are believe in your politics, and so they're going to go ahead and probably vote. There are judges that are activist judges, and there are judges that are not activist judges. The constitutional judges. So there is a difference.
Yeah,
there is a difference. I totally agree.
Look at this one paragraph. It says every action of the defendants was in accordance with their official Minneapolis Police Department training, which set forth the procedures police officers are to use in dealing with a suspect who appears to be suffering excited delirium. These procedures, which include kneeling on the side of a suspect's neck, are designed to enable the police to safely subdue an agitated, incoherent, non-compliant individual in the throes of excited delirium. In short, as will be discussed, these defendants are now in jail because they followed their training and act to minimize Floyd's risk of death from sudden onset of cardiac arrhythmia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that paragraph just said it all right now, and I think this is why they're going to have a very powerful motion to dismiss the case, because, again, when you can prove that every one of these officers followed the training, the Minneapolis Police Department's training materials to the letter. I mean, when you look at the illustrations of the manual, on how to deal with somebody who has excited delirium. This is exactly what the video shows Chauvin and the other 3 officers doing. It was textbook. If I mean, truth be told, you could actually use this as a training video based on the way they've been trained. What say you guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, first of all, but at some point, they're gonna say, well, he wasn't a threat anymore. Why didn't you just turn him on his side? And they're gonna go to those facts that he wasn't. He was mad. He was callous in the way he administered this training, and because this is the way he was trained. So that's the only thing I think they're going to be able to attack is that. Hey, at some point, don't you think when people were saying he can't breathe, didn't you think maybe you should have put him up, let him come up? And then guess his response could be that I didn't want him flopping around because it would, his breathing was already shallow. So I didn't want him to, and they were even telling him not to speak because it was taking up his breath, taking his breath away, basically. So the same thing stands to reason that he didn't, if you moving around and fighting, and then he was going to run out of oxygen, which eventually he did.
That's exactly is going to be his defense. They're going to say, this is the way I've been trained, and this is the way you facilitate somebody who has excited delirium, is by making sure that they're immobile so that they're not using more oxygen than necessary. I think he has a great defense because he's going to say that I followed precisely the manuals put out by my police department, and the fact is, a defense lawyer is going to say he was already saying he can't breathe way before that. So it's not like he started saying it at the moment when Officer Chauvin has his knee to the side of his neck, as per MPD training and directives. That's what he didn't start saying that at that moment. He was saying that right from the very beginning, and so I think that's going to be very easily rebutted by the defense. Henry.
You made 2 comments that I just wanted to go ahead and piggyback on. One was the comment that you made earlier, which is actually a very, very strong argument that could be made for a motion to dismiss. This may never even go to trial if they actually have attorneys that will present the case as it's been presented so far. There's so much evidence to show that the guys did just as they were trained. And again, if you listen just to the video, to the audio of the incident, you're not going to hear anything that has to do with racism. So that, again, motion to dismiss may be one of those things that it may never even go to trial. But again, because of all the things that are going on,
we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Join VMPR live on YouTube September 12th, 2020 for our latest free conference, The Ultimate Challenge. This exclusive virtual event will feature a brand new talk from Jesse Romero, How Apologetics Brought Me Back to Faith, plus never before broadcast video presentations from Father Mitch Pacwa, Dr. Scott Hahn, and the late great Father Benedict Groeschel.
And the question is, how do you understand the words of Jesus? This is my body. Not this bread is my body, but this is my body. This is the cup of my blood. And may I state categorically and emphatically that you cannot understand it. It is a mystery.
Go to vmpr.org to register now and get ready to face the ultimate challenge.
Absolutely mysterious.
If you shop on Amazon.com, there's an easy way to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Just visit smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center under the desired charity. Now, when you log into your Amazon account and purchase products, a portion of it will automatically go to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio at no cost to you. Thanks in advance for supporting CRC and VMPR, and may God richly bless you and your family.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
Jesus 911, we are back. I think we've covered that. We are going to be switching gears if you guys are ready to talk about...
Let's go one more, Ruben. Let's go one more segment on this.
Okay.
There's just, and then we'll talk about the other. Here's one more thing I want to just put the responsibility on the Minneapolis City Council. Look at this phraseology. It says, so where are these well-intentioned, well-trained, and dutifully public servants today? They're in jail, awaiting trial on murder and aiding and abetting charges for having been universally condemned in the news media and used by neo-Marxists and opportunistic criminals across the country as a pretext to riot, loot, and burn. And while they sit in their cells, not one Minneapolis official from Mayor Jacob Frey to Police Chief Medaria Arredondo or any member of the city council has come forward to acknowledge that in subduing Floyd, these officers were acting in meticulous accordance with the MPD training and directives designed to reduce the risk of harm to persons suffering excited delirium. And it says, in fact, these 4 officers were summarily fired by the MPD chief Arredondo, and he apologized to Floyd's family and acknowledged his department's purported role in creating the deficit of hope that he claims existed in Minneapolis even prior to Floyd's death. Talk about a politician. He threw 4 cops under the bus for following what his department has trained them to do. Then he says, look at this cowardly statement from the chief of police. He says, I am absolutely sorry for the pain, the devastation and trauma that Mr. Floyd's death has left on this world, his loved ones, our community in Minneapolis, and certainly across the country and the world. He said this in a news conference. And then it says, the Minneapolis City Council has acted to defund and dismantle the police department. All of this, mind you, now the lawyer's writing this, mind you, from the very officials who are ultimately responsible for the training and directives that the defendant officers followed to the letter in their attempt to safely subdue Floyd, who was under the influence of a massively lethal overdose of fentanyl and exhibiting an unmistakable signs of the deadly excited delirium. By their hypocrisy and cowardice, these blame-shifting public officials, desperate to preserve their political careers and places at the public trough, have tossed these 4 officers to the howling mob.
Right. Wow.
Comments?
Yeah, Henry, let me ask you a question. Is it possible that the higher-ups, the people like the chief who's responsible for, he doesn't personally train them on force, but he has to oversee that. Is there any, could he take responsibility, or could they shift the blame onto him? Maybe not in a criminal trial, but at least in a civil trial?
Well, that's what when they come at you and they're going to use the case, they're going to call it a deliberate indifference. What does that mean? Deliberate indifference means that, you know what, you have been sued before for excessive force. You haven't changed your tactics. Obviously, you don't care, and as a result, you've caused the death of another man. And so that's very, very commonly used in lawsuits against police departments, and that's where they go after the department. Hence, they go after the chief of police or the sheriff. Basically saying, you know what your policies are, you haven't changed them, and obviously there's a deliberate indifference on your part or the part. Because when they sue you, they don't sue the LA County Sheriff's Department. They'll sue. They sue the actual leader of the department, and then secondly the department itself. So there's lawsuits everywhere where it's so and so versus whoever the head of the department is. So yeah, they're going to come after Arredondo. Trust me.
Right. So he just apologized himself out of a job, right? When they're going to defund the police department, he's going to be out in the unemployment line, you know?
Can I make one comment, guys? One of the comments.
He gave the lawyers basically, he threw chum in the water.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
Wow.
did. But,
Go ahead.
you know, this whole thing, we're focusing on the cops. We're focusing on the cops. We're focusing on the cops, and we now know why they did and how they did it and how they were trained. What everybody still fails to do is put some of this onus on the actual suspect, in this case, George Floyd.
Absolutely.
Why did he end up the way he ended up? He ended up in that way because he was non-cooperative. He did not listen to their commands. If he would have just listened to everything that was asked of him, yeah, he was probably going to go to jail, but he would have been alive today. Or maybe not, depending on the amount of fentanyl. He could have died on the way to jail. He could have died while he was in the holding cell. But the fact of the matter is, we forget to put some of this responsibility where it actually belongs. Is, remember, use of force for police officers is reactive, and what I mean by reactive is we react to the suspect itself. That's what we're doing. We're not going and imposing our will on them. We are actually reacting to how they're reacting to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we live in a society, I mean, because of liberal, progressive, Marxist education, we live in a society where people don't take responsibility for their actions. And this is just classic. You said it, Henry. Everybody's talking about everybody else, the chief, the city council, the 4 cops. But you're right. The fact is, this man, he had a horrible past. I mean, this guy was a career criminal. He was a rapist. He was a drug addict. This guy wasn't exactly, going to be voted for Citizens of the Year anytime soon. And people, instead of saying, you know what, this guy had some real shortcomings. This guy, triggered this whole thing as a result of, trying to pass a Ford check and being under the influence of drugs and being passively resistant with the police. This guy would be alive right now, and nobody wants to talk about his personal responsibility.
Nope.
And that's, for example, that's like Candace Owens and others have said, why are we canonizing a crook? Why is it? I mean, this guy, there's nothing about his life that we should be canonizing him for. The fact of the matter is, I hope he made his peace with God, like I said from day one, because whoever doesn't make their peace with Jesus Christ before they die will end up in a whole horrible, eternal, global warming situation. Trust me. And so this guy's no different. You can try to canonize him here, but he had his day in court with Jesus Christ. And boy, oh boy, I'm going to say it again. If he didn't die in a state of grace and friendship with Christ, this man is going to end up in a horrible fiery furnace for the rest of eternity. That's a fact, whether you like it or not. And no, he was no role model as a man in this lifetime. Another thing that I just want to mention is that, again, when you look at the manuals of the Minneapolis Police Department, I think all a good defense lawyer has to do is put the pictures on a screen for the jury and then show the exact 4 officers what they were doing, and you're going to be able to say, see what they've been taught? Look at this next slide. That's what they're doing. See what they've been taught? Look at this next slide. That's exactly what they're doing. You want to see the conversation? Was there any racist rhetoric? Okay, let's look at the conversation. Let's put it up on the screen. I'm telling you, this is a dream come true for a defense lawyer. That's my opinion.
Hey, just you mentioned Candace Owens, and she's a bright young lady. I hope she gets into politics because she's right.
Oh yeah, no, we need her.
She says, Candace Owens to LeBron James says, you will never be what Kobe and Jordan were off the court because you lack intellect. You have multiple homes, white personal chefs, gardeners, and housekeepers. If that's not an example of literally being hunted by white people, then sign me up ASAP. Because LeBron says we're being hunted by white people, and he's living he's got white police officers guarding
living large, as they say. Living
officers.
Large, as Chapo Guzman would say.
I wish the police officers that guard him would just say, hey, you know what, we had it. He's paying us well, but the way how he speaks about law enforcement, let him find his own help.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys one thing is I saw something recently that really made a lot of sense. It was, we, especially in sports, I mean, we pay millions and millions of dollars to get the call right. They, was he out of bounds? Was he inbounds? Let's review it. Let's call the judges in
Slow
New York.
motion. Yeah, slow motion.
Yeah, slow motion. And then after 5 or 6 minutes, so we got it right, or you know what, the call was wrong. And yet, everybody in this world, they see a 10-second video of a police officer using force on somebody, or in this case, 8-minute video of using force, and right away they have decided they know exactly why it happened and what was the intentions of the police officers, and they basically judged them and crucified them all within the 8 minutes of seeing that video.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
here's a funny sentence in the article. It says, in short, Floyd was a walking drugstore.
Wow.
Yeah.
And on the verge of dying from a massive lethal fentanyl overdose.
Yep.
Third, like you said, Ruben, Floyd had a severe pre-existing cardiovascular disease described in his autopsy report as atherosclerotic heart disease, multifocal, severe, an enlarged heart, and a clinical history of hypertension. Fourth, Floyd exhibited all of the classic bizarre behaviors that constitute risk factors for excited delirium. Finally, it says, did Floyd die from excited delirium? Between his autopsy and toxicology findings and his agitated and incoherent behavior at the scene, he certainly fit the profile. So it is that, while Floyd was well on his way to expiring from a massively lethal overdose of fentanyl, that process could have well been interrupted by the sudden onset of fatal cardiac arrhythmia caused by excited delirium. But either way, the actions of the police played no material role in causing his death. That's the cash value right there in that paragraph, the last sentence.
Yeah, but let's just hope that people will look at the evidence, and judge for themselves based on the law. And we're seeing it all across the country. We saw that kid Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. He's being charged with murder when it was clearly self-defense. The officer in Atlanta, he's been charged with murder. Time and time again, the police officers are being thrown under the bus. And, it's a shame. It's shameful. It's going to be very hard to get recruits to work that kind of job that's, ungrateful. These people are ungrateful for what they do for them. When we come back, we're switching gears. We're going to be talking about Chicago gangs are threatening to shoot officers on sight if they have their guns drawn. Stay tuned.
We got Ernesto from Long Beach.
I just wanted to comment, and I just wanted to thank you guys. And I kind of wanted to encourage people that are listening, maybe that are not donating, because honestly, I got to be honest. I used to think you guys were a little
too over the top.
Yeah.
That's right.
If God gave us a lot, and I have the blessing of listening to all this, and I just want to call all the people. I got 5 kids, and I don't make a lot of money, and I'm still donating to you guys.
God bless you, brother. You're amazing.
We have to do this. We have to do the extra. And it's not even the extra. People see it like it's extra. Kneeling for communion, saying your rosary, saying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It is not extra. It's what the church tells us to do.
Amen. You're a good man, brother.
30 years old, 29 years old, 5 kids, and I thank you guys. But everybody else, man, get on fire. Fight for the truth, man. I know what I'm telling you guys. There's
I
so
love
much
it.
out there.
Jesus said in Matthew 26, "Stay awake and pray that you may not enter into temptation." According to St. Ephrem, Jesus, who feared nothing, experienced fear and asked to be freed from death, although he knew it was impossible. How much more must we persevere in prayer before temptation assails us, so that we may be freed when the test has come? May God grant that we may withstand temptation and carry out his will in all things.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show, and they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE, US 1.
Now, back to Jesus 911. If this call is not an emergency, dial 888-526-2151.
Jesus 911, blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the children of God.
Amen.
Jesse, I just want to point out, I know we always talking about how important this election is going to be. I don't know if you've heard this also, Henry. It just so happens that the presidential debates that are coming up fall on some very important feast days on the church.
Yeah.
So the presidential debates, first one's going to be September 29th, the feast of Saint Michael the Archangel, and I think that's all the archangels right there, Jess.
Yeah, all
Okay.
three.
Three. Okay, and then October 15th, the feast of Teresa of Avila, Saint Teresa of Avila, and October 22nd, the feast of Saint John Paul II. And the vice presidential debate is going to be on October 7th, the Feast of the Holy Rosary. So those are some important dates. So you know who your warriors are to pray to. They're very powerful on their feast day. So we need to be praying to these saints that our Republican candidates blow them out of the water. You know, if the Democrats have their way, they're going to try to pull Biden out of there, because there's no way he's going to be able to stand up and make any intelligent remarks. I've seen him too many times, and it's sad.
Unless he's over medicated, he may be lucid if they have him medicated.
They're propping him up like that. It's like it's elder abuse. That's my opinion. What they're doing.
It's sad, very sad.
Ruben, another important thing is, I think the Blessed Virgin Mary and God in heaven is been activated in this. You had the Ave Maria sung to close the RNC convention. When has that ever happened? When has any president ever had the Ave Maria in Latin sung to close a convention? Mm-hmm. Donald Trump also has, most people don't know, he has a statue of Our Lady of Fatima in the White House. It was given to him by an exorcist priest, Father Mahaluf, who also went in there to the White House and did a deliverance in the White House over every room. I mean, how often does that happen? You also have, yesterday I read that there are 5,400 masses being celebrated right now around the world for President Trump and for his team and for his reelection. So you got priests that are praying the most powerful prayers, the holy sacrifice of the Mass, for the most pro-life president to retain his office. And so, again, now that you share these dates coincide with some very important feast days of the saints, I think, once again, that there's going to be some divine intervention at the polls on November. That's my take. Yeah,
that's right, Just. And some people will say, well, the Democrats are praying for their candidates too. But when you're not in a state of grace, your prayers are bouncing off the walls.
Yep, John 9, yep, exactly.
Exactly. Right?
John 9:31, it's right in the Bible. God doesn't hear the prayers of somebody who's not in a state of grace.
Right.
And so, hey, I want to get you guys' takes. Here's an article that says more than 36 street gangs in Chicago reportedly vowed to shoot on sight any cop who has a weapon drawn in public. Points I want to make. Law enforcement is a God-ordained profession. Ruben just quoted the scripture. I think it was Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Police officers, deputy sheriffs, they are called to protect us against domestic enemies, while the military is called to protect us against foreign enemies. And this is a God-ordained profession. It's right in Scripture. Romans chapter 13, the entire chapter, it's a chapter of the military and law enforcement. But the difficulty is that why, I tell my two boys, text them every day, keep your head on a swivel, stay close to God, say your prayers, because it's a reactionary job. It's not, you're basically reacting to people's aggression. And so that's what makes it particularly dangerous, And so let's keep on praying every single night. You guys that live in Chicago, pray for your Chicago cops. You guys that live in LA, New York, pray for your cops every single night, because without them, what you're seeing in, with Chaz and Chop, that would happen in every single city without law enforcement.
Yeah.
Comments?
Go ahead, Henry.
It's amazing that I even read the fact that we got so many street gangs that are going to be going after cops. Why would the media publish something like that? What responsibility is the media playing in this whole thing? Why are they saying
they want it to happen?
It's like they're saying it's okay. Go ahead, guys. It's there's 50 gangs or whatever it is, 36 gangs saying that they're going to shoot you. Anybody else want to come on board? They're promoting this.
Exactly.
And why is this happening? I mean, it's like the cops are the bad people.
Right.
I don't understand. It's very hard for me to understand that part.
Irresponsible. The media's just irresponsible. This is then they have an agenda, and they're anti-law enforcement, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-capitalism, they're anti-God, they're anti-conservative. And I mean, at this point, they're not even hiding their colors. Ruben?
So this was put out by the gangs, or this was the media heard this and disseminated this information. It wasn't law enforcement that was saying, "Hey, we got to be on the, like a bolo, be on the lookout." This is something the media is purporting, right? Because if it's law enforcement, then I would say the same thing, Henry. Why would law enforcement would be better off, publishing it just for their own people, not the public at large, to avoid that, what do they call it, like prophetic utterance? It's right. Where it's important to know your prophetic utterance, and that could either create or stop an action. It's so, the gangs, they realize that, hey, our playbook is out there in plain sight. So, let's stop. They're going to come after us, but on the other hand, it, like you said, it gives the ability to influence people who may have not thought of that, and so they want to go out there and commit the dirty deed of shooting a police officer.
Yeah, that's the kind of information that becomes intelligence, and when you get intelligence for any police agency, it is disseminated within the department. I mean, it's a heads up information for the officers, not for public press, but somehow or another, like I said, it seems like the media is glamorizing the fact that, hey, you got all these gangs that are now going to shoot at cops that are that have their guns out, without knowing the facts of what's going on, without knowing why the gun is out. It's basically also letting the bad guys know, the suspects, hey, the gang's got our backs. We can go out there and do whatever we not. If their gun comes out, somebody's going to go ahead and blast it. So we're going to be fine. So the suspects or the bad guys out there feel empowered. You're emboldening them because you're telling them, don't worry. If the cops comes out here, we're going to go ahead and we'll have your back. We don't care what the reason is. Well, that's what it comes down to.
This past weekend, there was 40 people shot in Chicago and 6 people murdered. And that's actually a good weekend for them, huh? I mean,
yes, it is. It's a good week.
So, but the sad part is a couple officers were shot. They weren't killed, but they came up on it. And this is led to a lot of the uproar. 2 officers come across a vehicle. They see a gun on the seat and telling the guy to, let's show me your hands. And he somehow reaches for the gun, shoots 2 of the officers, one in the chest and shoulder. He's being operated on. The other one, he's not too bad, and they're both going to survive. The officer, a third officer, shot the suspect. He didn't die, but nowadays you can't shoot anybody, even if you have a very good reason to do so, without the mob coming and turning on you. We saw that in our own South LA. I don't know if you saw that, Henry. South LA station was trying to be overrun. Actually, I think it's day 6 or day 7 now. And I have to give kudos to our sheriff here, who didn't back down, and I was talking to people who were there. They said, when we unleashed the less lethal, the pepper balls and the stun grenades, and boom, the people fled. They didn't want no part of it.
Right.
But in towns like Detroit, where they're taking away their less lethal options, it's I feel so bad for these officers. You know, they're sitting there with, you know, sucking their thumb because there's nothing they could do other than lethal force, you know?
You know, it's going back to the Ferguson effect. Most of the cops are hesitant to use any kind of force. They're second guessing themselves. They don't want to be on TV. They don't want to be the next, Derek Chauvin, where, you know, the whole world's going to be against them, you know, second guessing their moves. I mean, the fact that a guy has a gun on his seat, you go ahead and draw your weapon and tell him, don't move, and he's still able to get 2 shots off. That tells me the guy hesitated. They hesitated, and that's why they got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, and most cops, unfortunately, that's the way they're operating. They're operating on, you know, with kid gloves. I don't want to be second guessed, and they're not making the appropriate decisions, or they're hesitating.
I used to say to my partner, kind of like in jest, but, you know, tongue in cheek, I say, look, if I get shot sitting in my radio car with my gun in my holster, do me a favor, take my gun out and blast a couple rounds in the air. At least they'll know that I got a couple rounds off. You know, you don't ever want to be caught as a sitting duck, you know, and you pride yourself in having your head on a swivel and, you know, watching your six, and you just don't want to be surprised. You know, a couple times that, you know, where guys came up on me and I'm like, God, it caught me slipping, you know, and, you know, and it stays with you as you retire. I'm sure you guys are the same way. You know, you're always looking around at the ATM machine. You know, you don't want somebody coming up behind you. I just want to mention that we've had 188 police officers killed this year so far. Wow. But COVID-19 took 101 away. So, but 33 have died of gunfire, and 4 died of inadvertent gunfire. You know, like training or friendly fire. But you know, and there's vehicle pursuits and hit by cars. But you know, the state that leads the deaths of police officers is Texas, which I was so surprised. There's 42 deaths in Texas, and some of them are correctional officers that succumbed to COVID. But still, the amount of deaths is staggering. And you have deaths by gender: males 172, females 16. That's pretty high for females. Mm-hmm. Very high. So let's keep our police officers in our prayers.
Amen. Here's the last thing I want to make. I think that if President Trump wins the second election, I think he's going to deal with this. He's going to deal with all these problems with an iron fist, and I think he's just kind of being cautious right now. He wants to get back in office. I think we're going to see the unleashing of federal law enforcement, and I think you're going to see a lot of states are going to realize this guy's got our back, and they're going to be able to squash this problem. Because what the left is using, they're overwhelming everything. That's a tactic. It's a swarm tactic. Overwhelm police precincts, overwhelm city hall, overwhelm police headquarters, overwhelm restaurants. It's called the Cloward and Piven method. We'll talk about it next time.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us, Henry. It's always insightful when you're with us. Appreciate your candid points.
Thanks for the invite, guys.
You're welcome. And you've been listening to Jesus 911. We hope we sufficiently covered this George Floyd case, and let's just see how it plays out in the trial. God bless you. Have a good day. Stay tuned for Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Mashuda. Pray your rosary. Stay in a state of grace. Viva Cristo Rey.
Amen. Viva.
Saint Faustina's Prayer for Priests. O my Jesus, I beg thee on behalf of the whole Church, grant it love and the light of thy Spirit, and give power to the words of priests, so that hardened hearts might be brought to repentance and return to thee, O Lord. Lord, give us holy priests. Thou thyself maintain them in holiness. O divine and great High Priest, may the power of thy mercy accompany them everywhere, and protect them from the devil's traps and snares, which are continually being set for the souls of priests. May the power of thy mercy, O Lord, shatter and bring to naught all that might tarnish the sanctity of priests. For thou canst do all things. Amen. Virgin most powerful, pray for us.